Steve Beckner of MNI, Mr. Chairman. It's been a pleasure covering you. One of the factors that your policy statement says will be considered in assessing the future pace of asset purchases is the cost and efficacy of those purchases. To what extent has or you might say, costs and benefits, to what extent has that calculation already changed? To what extent did that affect today's decision? And going forward, looking on the cost side, somebody else mentioned bubbles. Not just bubbles, but to what extent will, the whole consideration of threats to financial stability come into play, as well as the potential for losses on the Fed's own portfolio?
So I'll answer your question. I'll try and help maybe do a better job on Binya's question as well. We do think, again, of the asset purchases as a secondary tool behind interest rate policy. And we do think that the cost-benefit ratio, particularly as the assets on the balance sheet get large, that it moves in a way that's less favorable. The costs involved include managing the exit from that. It's very unlikely that the Fed will have losses in any comprehensive sense. We've already put $350 billion of profits back, which is about as much as we delivered to the Treasury between 1990 and 2007 combined. So over any period of time, clearly the Fed is actually making a good bit of money for the taxpayer and for the government. But it could be that we would be in a situation of not giving remittances to the Treasury for a couple of years, and that would create problems, no doubt, for the Fed in terms of congressional response. There are issues of how well we understand and can manage the effects of asset purchases. I think, for example, that an important difference between asset purchases and interest rate policy is that asset purchases work by affecting what's called the term premium, which is essentially the additional part of the interest rate which investors require as compensation for holding longer-term securities. We just don't understand very well, and I say we, I mean the economic profession, don't understand very well what moves the term premium. And so we saw last summer, we saw a very big jump in the term premium that was very destabilizing and created a lot of stress in financial markets. So there are a number of reasons why asset purchases, while effective, while I think they have been important, are less attractive tools than traditional interest rate policy. And that's the reason why we've relied primarily on interest rates, but used asset purchases as a supplement when we've needed it to keep forward progress. I think that, obviously there are some financial stability issues involved there. We look at the possibility that asset purchases have led to bubbly pricing in certain markets, or in excessive leverage or excessive risk-taking. We don't think that that's happened to an extent which is a danger to the system, except other than that, when those positions unwind, like we saw over the summer, they can create some bumpiness in interest rate markets in particular. Our general philosophy on financial stability issues is where we can, that we try to address it first and foremost by making sure that the banking system and the financial system are as strong as possible. If banks have a lot of capital, they can withstand losses, for example, and by using whatever other tools we have to try to avoid bubbles or other kinds of financial risks. That being said, I don't think that you can completely ignore financial stability concerns in monetary policy because we can't control them perfectly, and there may be situations when financial instability has implications for our mandate, which is jobs and inflation, which we saw, of course, in the Great Recession. So it's a very complex issue. I think it will be many years before central banks have completely worked out exactly how best to deal with financial instability questions. Certainly the first line of defense for us is regulatory and other types of measures, but we do have to pay some attention to that. I would say at this point, though, that the asset purchases program, the last one, is well on its way to meeting our economic objective, and I'm very pleased that we're able to, over time, wind down this program, slowing the pace of purchases on current plans, because we reached our objective rather than because the costs or efficacy issues became important. So I think that in this case that's not a concern at this juncture with respect to this program.
Annalyn Kurtz with CNN. I recall in Jackson Hole last year